What's up, joyfuls? So when I was pregnant with my now 18-month-old son, I can remember searching YouTube for successful VBAC birth stories. You've had horror stories, you've had some unsuccessful stories, but I wanted to share a success story and one thing that you need when you're going in the hospital to have a baby. So if you know someone who's thinking about doing VBAC or having a natural birth, or if you yourself are considering VBAC or natural birth, stay tuned. If you're new to this channel, what's up? I'm Purity Joy, and welcome to Joyfully Yours, where life is our niche and joy is our birthright. Alright, so as I stated in the beginning, this video is going to be about my natural birth and VBAC success. I can just remember when I was pregnant with my now 18-month-old son, how I was looking for these stories. And you know, when you're pregnant and you just want to hear some success stories, and when you're trying to consider and make decisions, there's a lot of anxiety that comes along with pregnancy. But when you're trying to decide and make decisions about how you want to handle the birth of your baby and bringing your child into this world, there's a lot of things to consider, and there's a lot of things that you're thinking about constantly. And so it helps when you can hear someone else's story and the successes of their story and what they may have done to prepare for that success. And so I want to be able to share my story with you guys today. So let me give you a little bit. I have been pregnant 6 times. Yes, this little body has been pregnant 6 whole times. And I've only had 3 live births, so 50-50 here. I've had a few miscarriages, and I won't get into that right now, but if you want to hear a separate story about my miscarriages and how those came along and how I was successful after those miscarriages, leave me a comment below and I will make a video about my miscarriage stories, and the healing process and all of that comes along with it. So leave a comment below, and if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you know when I post new content. All right, so yes, I've been pregnant 6 times, 3 live births. I have a history of PCOS, which I think I've always had cystic ovaries, but my labs didn't start matching the diagnosis, I guess, until I didn't find out until after my first or second miscarriage that I may possibly have PCOS. And I don't have the typical symptoms that most women with PCOS have. I have the facial hair issue, and I get the cystic ovaries and the cramps that go along with cystic ovaries. Tend to have those symptoms, but anything outside of that I don't really experience. So and the last time I went to the doctor, she said that my labs look normal. I don't take any medications for it or anything. So I think I'm just back to just having cystic ovaries without being so textbook polycystic ovarian syndrome. I've also had a ablation to my uterus. Doctor thought I may have had some tumors or cysts on my actual uterine lining, so I went in and had a procedure done to remove the scar tissue and all of that done. And the crazy thing about that is he told me if I had this procedure that it was a possibility that I may not ever be able to get pregnant again. And when he told me that, when I made the decision to go through with it, I didn't really know where I was with having a baby. Mind you, none of my pregnancies have been planned except for my daughter. And even when we were planning for her, it still didn't happen when we planned for it. It kind of just happened when we weren't paying attention, and weren't forcing anything. So none of my pregnancies have been planned. So yeah, I was kind of up in the air with having an ablation, but I ended up going through with it. And crazy thing is, I got pregnant twice after having that procedure. So, you know, some things are destiny, and you really don't have control over as much as you think you do. So, you know, that's why I say my children that are here were meant to be here. Regardless of if I was on any birth control or anything. But to piggyback off of the birth control thing, I have not been on birth control since the end of 2012. And I just haven't been on birth control since. And so, long story short, that's my history pretty much of me and babies and pregnancies. So with this pregnancy, of course, he was a surprise. Was not expecting him. I just had a miscarriage, I think maybe 6 months before this, so it was definitely a surprise. It was a good surprise. But with this pregnancy, I did take things a little easier, just a little easier, not a whole lot. The first few weeks, I kind of cut back on my yoga, rested like I needed to, tried to eat well. And I won't go in, like I said, I won't go into a whole bunch of detail about what I did with this pregnancy. If you want a separate video, if you want a video on that, make sure you leave a comment below. So back to the story. So with this baby, and my last living child, my middle child, who's now 11, and with my baby boy, I had intrauterine growth restriction, which means that the baby does not grow as frequently as it's supposed to. At some point it stops growing for whatever reason, nutritional reasons, lack of space, different reasons. I never had this issue with my oldest son, who will soon be 18. Gosh, that sounds crazy. My oldest son will be 18 in a few months. That is crazy. But anyway, so I never had the issue with him, but with these last two live babies, I had that issue. So in the beginning of this pregnancy, I decided that I wanted to do VBAC. And if you don't know what VBAC is, hopefully you know, because hopefully you're watching this video because you're considering it. So VBAC is vaginal birth after cesarean. So with my middle child, which is why I wanted to have VBAC. My first two experiences of giving birth weren't as beautiful as I'd hoped. Of course, bringing a child in this world is beautiful, but the experiences were just different. I had never, prior to my baby boy, I'd never gone into labor on my own. Both of my births were induction. So my first child, my oldest child that will soon be 18, I said it again, he'll be almost 18, oh goodness. So my first child will soon be 18. He was 41 weeks when I had him. So with that being my first pregnancy, I went longer, which is pretty typical. So they had pretty much forced him into the world. So it went fine. I was in labor for 8 hours, pushed him out a couple of times, but I got an epidural with him and couldn't feel my legs, which was not bad, but you know, I just hadn't had the natural experience. And I don't care what anybody says, induction labors, and I can say for sure now, induction labor is absolutely worse than natural labor. One reason why is because some people will push Pitocin entirely too fast, and so your contractions come back to back from the very beginning. There is no easing your way up from every 5 minutes or every 2 minutes or whatever. There is, when my Pitocin was pushed with my first son, with my first child, my contractions will come at every 30 seconds to a minute the entire time I was in labor with him for 8 hours. Yes. So that's how quickly it worked. And it could just be the way Pitocin responds to my body. I'm not saying that for everybody, but it just could be the way the Pitocin responds to my body. I go into labor instantly. With my second child, I was induced with her because of the intrauterine growth restriction. They want to get her out to prevent stillbirth. So, got her out, but they pushed the Pitocin entirely too fast. Mind you, the nurse I had was horrible. And I'm a nurse myself, and I'm saying this, that nurse was horrible. She didn't believe I was in as much pain. One thing that ticks me off is somebody thinking they know how much pain you're in when you're not. And from what I've heard, that is something common amongst Black women in dealing with healthcare workers. They think Black women can tolerate more pain for whatever reason, but I really have a high pain tolerance, believe it or not, and I've developed that over the years. And I was in pain because my contractions were coming every 30 seconds to a minute. And I think they pushed my Pitocin too fast, which in turn dropped my baby's heart rate, and I ended up having to have an emergency C-section. I said all of that to say this. This is why I was adamant about doing VBAC. I hated having a cesarean. I didn't want the experience I had with my daughter. That was traumatizing. And then after I had her, I was so drowsy from the medication they gave me that I couldn't even hold her immediately. That is not what I wanted. And that's not everybody's experience with cesarean sections, with C-sections. That's not everybody's experience. But that was my experience. And all I had to go on was what I experienced during childbirth with my second child. Did not want that again. Also, when I had my first children, my first two, I was a lot younger. I was in my younger 20s. Now I'm over 35, and I had this child over the age of 35. So, a little bit different, different outlook on childbirth, a little more knowledgeable, a little more experienced, and so I use with the information that I had now to kind of make the decision to take the route that I did with this. So that's how I ended up making a decision. I was very adamant about a VBAC. I told my doctor, and my doctor is in with 2 other doctors, so they kind of rotate out, so any of them could have delivered. And it's actually a whole group of them, but it's more than the 2 of them, but or the 3 of them. But anybody in the group could deliver the baby, just depending on what my doctor, who was on call. So I did let them know that I was wanting VBAC and that I wanted a natural birth. I said that from the very beginning. I was adamant about it, and they supported it. Now, when you're making a decision to be a VBAC or to have VBAC, you have to make sure that you actually meet the criteria. There's information out on the internet. Everything's on the internet. So there's information out there about the criteria you need to meet in order to have a VBAC. And also, you want to discuss that with your physician, whether you meet those criteria, whether they think it's safe for you to have a cesarean. Honestly, y'all, I really wanted a home birth with this child, but there was nobody in my area that really supported that. There were no midwives that I could find that really supported it. And it might have cost a little more money than what I wanted to pay. So that's why I was like, this is what I want. Can y'all support it? And I was even willing to go to a different physician if they would not support my decision, and get a second opinion. And I love my physician. I love my doctor. But I was willing to go to get another opinion if they did not support my desire to have VBAC and have a natural birth. So that being said, they supported it. So back to the intrauterine growth restriction. So I did well throughout my pregnancy. And then we got to about, I want to say I got up to about 32 weeks, and they noticed that the baby was not growing as quickly as they had hoped. So with me having a history of IGUR, which is intrauterine growth restriction, IUGR, did I say that right? Yeah, IUGR. I had a history of that. They kind of assumed that that was the case for this. They also noticed that his head was a lot bigger than the rest of his body, so they were concerned about some other things. Being that I was over 35, they were concerned about some other issues. So I told them, it is what it is. Let's do what we need to do. I still did not want to have cesarean section. I still wanted to do VBAC. And we would just monitor closely to my 36-week appointment. And that's when they said, we may have to take him a little bit earlier. We may have to induce your labor. And now we want you to start coming twice a week to be monitored. on this. So for the fetal stress test, they wanted me to come be monitored, make sure the baby's heart was beating, make sure he was moving, I was still having kicks, and then do ultrasound. So, and then I had dilated 2 centimeters. So, lined everything up. And with me, as you know, if you watch my channel, you know I'm a caregiver for my mom. So I called my brother, who was going to come in from out of town and sit with my mom for a few weeks while I recovered from having a baby. So I lined everything up, told my brother, you know, they may be taking the baby early. They're going to try to let me get to 37 weeks. And then at that point, if they have to induce me, then they're going to induce me. So we got to, so we set it up, and so I think my appointment was on a Tuesday when they made a decision, so they wanted me to start coming at Thursday to get monitored just to be sure. I think I was 36 weeks. Yeah, I had to be 36 weeks. So set up the appointment. So that Thursday comes and I go into the doctor and I get monitored. They put me on the machine, the baby's kicking, heartbeat is fine. They do an ultrasound, baby looks good, no issues. So she said, well, we may be able to push you for another week, you know. So let's keep trying to push you as long as we can. She told me that we won't schedule your induction right now, but I am looking at the days where I will be on call, because she said, I will be honest with you, everybody on our group that could deliver your baby does not support VBAC, and so I want to make sure that either I'm there or another doctor is on call when you go into labor, so that we can support that. When you have awesomeness like that, somebody that's going to take that in consideration, that is awesome. When you have somebody that's going to take that in consideration and make those adjustments for you, that is an awesome doctor for you to have, which is why I love my physician's office. They were amazing, and they're actually an hour away from where I live. So you can see why I hold on to them. I could have easily, you know, had my baby closer to home or got a doctor closer to home, but I kept them after I moved back home, just because of how great they are. I leave the doctor, I call my brother and I say, they're gonna push me out for another week. Everything is looking good, so stand down. So that Thursday, that night I get home, my son had a basketball game away. The school where they were playing at, I didn't go. I normally try to go to all of his games as much as I can, but with me being pregnant, the game being 2 hours away, a little over 2 hours away, it being late, I decided not to make that drive by myself. So, so I came home, I did a little yoga that night. I think I drank some red raspberry tea, did some yoga, and I knew I was going to have to go pick my son up from the school because he didn't have a car yet. So I knew I was going to have to go and pick him up from the school once he got back, and it was late. So they ended up getting there a little after midnight. I drove to the school to pick him up. I laid down prior to getting him after I did my yoga. I dozed off. Alarm went off. Oh no, he called and I woke up. He said, Mom, I'm ready. So I went to go get him. And I came back home and I laid down, and 2 o'clock I woke up with these intense, and I'm talking about intense cramps, and I was like, whew, you know, it was enough to wake me up out of my sleep. And I said, what is going on? So I said, I don't know if I'm in labor, you know, because I had never gone in labor by myself. I've only experienced inductions. The only time that I knew what it was like to go into labor was during my miscarriages, and that's what it kind of felt like. Because, you know, with miscarriages, and mind you, both my miscarriages, all of my miscarriages have been second trimester, so they're a little more intense than if you lose a baby in your first trimester. These babies are bigger, so they're a little more intense. So anyway, that's kind of what it felt like. So I got up and I said, well, just in case this is labor, let me get up and tidy up my room. And I started cleaning up, and I stayed up and I straightened up for 2 hours. I said, well, let me pack a bag, because mind you, I'm not ready, because once she told me that we were going to wait another week, I procrastinated a little longer, and I did not have all my baby stuff. And I was working up until this point. I didn't take any leave off or anything before I was working. So with work and taking care of my mom and my son playing basketball, trying to make it to all of his games and tending to my daughter and all of that, I just hadn't made time to pack a hospital bag. Yes, at 36 weeks, I had not packed a hospital bag. So at that point, I was still packing, and 4 o'clock came, and they kind of calmed down the cramps, and they were coming like contractions. So they were coming like every 2 minutes, and then they started to slow up, and then it was every 4 minutes, then it was like every 6 minutes. So I was like, they're calming down, so now I can lay back down. I had a contraction timer on, well, I downloaded a contraction timer onto my phone, an app, so I could kind of document the contractions on the app. So I did that, and I woke up at about 6 again, and they were getting more intense. And I woke up, and it was time for me to wake up, because every morning I would take my daughter to school, and then I would swing by and pick up my nephew and my bonus son, which is the baby's brother. I would go and pick him up from his mom's house, and I would come back and take them and my son to school after I took my daughter to school. They were all in high school. They're all in high school. So I would drop them off at the high school. Well, that morning, I went and picked my nephew up, and I had him, when I told him, I said, I think I'm having contractions. What I want you to do is, when I tell you to hit start, I want you to hit start. When I tell you to hit stop, I want you to hit stop. And he did a great job doing that. And I still didn't tell them I was in, well, no, did I tell them I was in labor? No, I just told him, when you hit this, when I tell you to hit start. When I tell you to hit stop, hit stop. I really didn't tell either of them that I was in labor that morning. And not only that, I got back to the house, and that morning the home health nurse was coming to do an assessment on my mom to see if she would need some home health stuff. She wasn't on hospice at this point. So I came back to the house after I dropped them off at school, and I called the doctor, and I let her know, well, I called the doctor's office and let them know that I thought I was having contractions, and she said, because of the IUGR, you need to go ahead and go to the hospital, because we don't need to take any chances with this because of that. So I said, okay. Mind you, I'm still not really prepared, because I haven't even purchased everything. I think I had already purchased my nightgown online and socks and stuff like that, but I hadn't purchased anything for the baby to come home in, or any necessities like that, no diapers, nothing. I hadn't purchased any of that stuff. I had a few things from the baby shower, but it wasn't a lot. So I hadn't even purchased all of that. So I came home, and I called my friend who lived close to the hospital, and I told her, I said, I am about to, after they told me to come on in, I came in and I called my friend and I said, I am about to drive to the hospital. She said, you are not driving to the hospital. Are you in labor? I said, yes. She said, you are not. I'm coming to get you. So she was willing to drive an hour to come get me and drive an hour to take me back. And I said, no, I can't let you do that. I'd rather get in the car and drive myself. I said, I can handle it, because the contractions had picked back up the way they were at that morning at 2 a.m., but they were starting to slow back down. So I finished packing my bags. The home health nurse came. I called my aunt to come and sit with my mom, to come stay with my mom, just in case the hospital admitted me, because I'm still unsure if this is real labor or not. I was talking to the home health nurse, trying to explain to her, mind you, I'm having contractions, so I'm breathing through contractions, and I'm explaining to her my mom's situation and condition. She leaves. I gather, so then I called my god sister, and I said, they told me to come to the hospital. I think I'm in labor. And she said, you are not driving up there by yourself. I'm leaving work. I'm coming to get you, and we're going. So she came to get me. Well, I drove to her house and picked her up. And then I told her, I said, we got to stop at Target. Mind you, I'm a Target fanatic. Everything I get, pretty much I get it from Target. So we're in Target. And I still have not made it. Mind you, the hospital's an hour away. It is 11 o'clock. I still have not made it to the hospital. So we get to Target, and mind you, I called the doctor's office like 8 that morning. So So it's 11 o'clock. We still haven't made it to the hospital. We're in Target. So we're walking around Target. I'm thinking of everything I need to get the baby and all that. Got that stuff for the baby. Who told the cashier. I'm still having to keep my god sister focused because the contractions had calmed down. They weren't as intense. So I was able to breathe through, you know, as much as I could. And my god sister's like, oh, look at this. Look at this. She's wanting to shop normal. I'm like, girl, stay focused. We are here to get stuff for the baby. You in here trying to shop for yourself. She still ended up picking some stuff up, and we kind of laughed about it. We told the cashier that I was in labor, and she was like, girl, if you had this baby in here, oh my goodness. And I said, no, I'm not gonna have the baby. We still gotta go to the hospital. So we finally get on the road to get to the hospital. That is a little over an hour away. Get to the hospital. I go up to the maternity unit, the observation unit, and they put me in the observation room. I tell them, they hook me up to the monitor. I tell them I think I'm having contractions. They hook me up to the monitor. I told them the doctor told me to come on in. And she says, you are definitely in labor. You don't feel any of that? And I was like, no. She's like, you are definitely in labor. They checked me and I was 4 centimeters dilated. I explained to them, and my sister was right there behind me. I explained to them that I didn't want very much. I wanted very little medical interference. I said I want a natural birth. I want VBAC. And, you know, I explained to them all of my concerns. They were very open. They were very interested. And they were very open. And she said, we're going to leave you hooked up. I'm going to let the doctor come in. It's going to be a while. So he came in like an hour later. Mind you, this whole time, I'm answering my work phone. I'm working on my laptop. All of this time. So he came in. By the time he came back in, I think I was at 5.5 centimeters maybe. And he said, we're going to keep you. Because of the IUGR, I don't want to send you back home. He said, I don't want to induce your labor because that may make things worse. I'm fine with you doing VBAC. That is no problem. He said, you know, now if an emergency comes up, then we'll do what we have to do. But I'm fine with you let you stay here in labor. I'd rather you stay here in labor so we can be there just in case of an emergency because of IUGR. And but we'll just let you ride. We'll just let you go. He said, now if it gets to be too much or it gets to be too long, you know, you can change your mind, you can make that decision, but we support you. And this wasn't even my physician. This was another physician on call in the group. And he was very supportive of my decision. So I'm so very grateful for that. So we stayed in the observation unit until they were able to put me in the L&D room. By the time they got me to the L&D room, I was 6 centimeters. So I think I got in the L&D room a little after, maybe 6:30. The doctor came in at about 7, a little after 7. No, I got to the L&D room because no, I was still working. So wait a minute, let me back up. I stopped working at 5, so maybe 4, maybe around 3:34, I was finally in the L&D room. And then they hooked me up in there, got me settled. My nurse was very supportive of my decision. She didn't try to force anything. They left me alone, turned out the lights. I asked them for a yoga ball, and I labored on that yoga ball. I sat on it, I bounced on it, and I rolled on it. I sat there. I bounced and I rolled, and I did that for a few hours. I worked from my laptop on it. And I just labored as I could, you know, until 5 o'clock. I was done with working a little bit after 5. And I then got into bed and rested for a little while. They brought my water at around 7 or a little after 7. And whew, he said, now that you've progressed, he said your water doesn't seem to be breaking, but you're at 7 centimeters. So we're going to go ahead and break your water. So he did manipulate my water. They brought my water. And when they brought my water, baby, things changed tremendously. I'm talking about almost instantly. Whew, goodness. Whew. Those contractions went from being little contractions to baby intense. You hear me? I'm talking about intense. Almost immediately. So I got back on that labor ball and I tried to roll and I tried to rock and I did all that I could do on that labor ball. Baby, those things got more and more intense as time came on through. And let's see, an hour goes by, and I'm like, y'all got to give me something. Y'all have got to give me something. I cannot do this. I can't do this. I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to do it. Oh, God, I'm not going to be able to do it. And I'll be forever indebted and grateful to my sister, my God sister, for looking at me and saying, PJ, you said you wanted to do a natural labor. I just want to remind you that you said this is what you wanted. And if that's what you want, I support you. I support you whatever decision that you make. But this is what you wanted. And she reminded me of that. And when she said that to me, I put my big girl panties on. I got my meditation that I had downloaded to my phone. I got my earbuds. I got in bed and I meditated and I focused and I breathed my way through. And when I started to feel pressure at around 8:30, the nurse came in and she said, I want you to do one big push. You got one little piece of skin left right here that I want you to move out of the way. One push. And they ran and got the doctor. The doctor came in taking his nice little time, child. Just nice little time. Just putting his gown on, putting his gloves on. I looked at the doctor and I said, I can't hold him anymore. He's coming out. I can't hold it. And my God sister said my eyes got real big and I lifted up. Y'all, I lifted up into, it was like a yoga pose. I lifted up and he was out. The doctor turned around just in time to catch him. He turned around just in time to catch him. It wasn't no holding my legs up. I literally lifted my butt up off the bed and my baby was out. He turned around and did just like this. Yeah, I really could have had my baby at home. He slid out. I didn't even really push. I did not even push. I pushed that one time she told me to push to move the rest of that skin out of the way she said that was there. But other than that, the baby came out. And this is why I now believe that your body does the work for you. This whole notion that we have to push, I believe that our bodies were created. Our bodies were created to do the work for us. We were created to give birth to babies. So the body does the work for you. That's why you have contractions, so your body can push the baby out. My body did all the work. I didn't push my baby out. My uterus contracted enough for him to slide out. Mind you, he was small now. He was 5 pounds and 1 ounce. But he came on out. And the doctor called him. That was just it. Laid him on my chest and he had latched onto my breast immediately. The one thing that I regret not doing is having them wait to cut his umbilical cord. I read so many studies that said, you know, the longer you leave the umbilical cord after the child's birth, the more successful the birth will be, because the placenta needs to finish pumping blood into that baby. It's like you're cutting off their oxygen when you cut the umbilical cord too soon. And I wholeheartedly believe that my baby wouldn't have had to go to the special care unit. And that's the one thing. He had to end up going to the special care unit because his breathing hadn't developed well. He was about 4 weeks early. He wasn't super early, but his breathing still needed to be developed. I had him at 36 weeks. So it still wasn't developed like it needed to be. But he ended up spending a week in the special care unit. But I wholeheartedly believe if I would have not allowed the doctor to cut his umbilical cord as quickly as he did, we might have had a different outcome. Don't know, but that's just my theory. That's my theory, my thesis, my conclusion, you know, if you rather, that we probably should have left the umbilical cord on. But I have to say this birth was my most pleasant experience, and I would do it all over again. This is the most pleasant experience I had in bringing a child. It was the most beautiful thing. There wasn't a whole lot of noise, a whole lot of lights like I remember with my other pregnancies. Wasn't a whole lot of doctors and nurses around, just in and out, in and out. It went quickly. Once I got to the hospital, the time flew by. Time flew by. It was peaceful. The lights were off. They turned off the lights for me. I was able to meditate. I didn't have a whole lot of family around. It was just me and my god sister. This was a little bit different. I will say it was a little bit different. It was different in so many ways. Number one, I was over 35. Number two, you know, I didn't have my parents. You know, my mom has dementia, so she wasn't in the mental state, or is not in the mental state to, you know, be there as she had been with the other two children. My father's deceased. So I didn't have their support like I did with the other two children. So that was a huge difference. Didn't have a lot of visitors. Didn't have a whole lot of medical interference and people in and out. It wasn't like that. You know, my nurse helped encourage me. She was telling me, you were almost there to give in and get something for pain. She, you know, she supported me. She said, we support you. You're almost there. When you start to feel that intense, she said, I didn't want to tell you this while you were in labor, but when you are almost there and those contractions start to get intense like that, it means that you're almost there. And I didn't want to tell you that because I didn't know, but I was almost certain from all my years of experience that you were almost there and you didn't have much longer to be in labor. So, you know, she was a supporter. She rode my back. She helped me try different positions to alleviate the pain. You know, she was there for me there, but they kept the lights down the whole time. You know, they didn't turn the lights up until it was time for me to push him out or deliver him, rather. So I was grateful and thankful to have that type of support from the hospital and the doctors, and then just to have my god sister be there to remind me of what I desired, and to be so supportive and just to be so supportive and support me in what I needed. I didn't, you know, I let her watch TV, but I put my earbuds in. It was quiet. It was a beautiful experience. And although I would have loved to do that at home, the staff and my god sister made it a pleasant experience even at the hospital. So my successful VBAC in natural labor. Sometimes induction is a serious thing, and like I said, my first experience with induction wasn't that bad. It was just very painful, and the second one was a terrible experience. Like I said, I ended up having to go to emergency surgery. My nurse just didn't believe the amount of pain I was in, and it was just a lot. And so that just really triggered me to want to have a better birthing experience, and I really did. And there were some things I did while I was pregnant to ensure that this experience, like meditation and things like that, but I can do a separate video on how I prepared to have this birth, because it did take preparation. It did take preparation for this to happen. And now the one thing that I feel like you need when you go, this is the one thing that you need when you go in the hospital to have a baby. In light of all of these women that have had horror stories, and especially Black women, women of color tend to just not be treated fairly and have higher death rates or mortality rates when they go to have a baby, and it should not be that way. And so this one thing that you need when you go into hospital, and it's this simple: you need an advocate, whether it's your significant other, your husband, or for me, like my god sister. That advocate needs to be there by your side to advocate for you if you are in pain, so no one is questioning your pain, to be there for you. You know when something is going wrong in your body. You know your body better than a physician. Now, I'm not, in all of my years of nursing, my purpose in nursing has changed, where my purpose in nursing was initially to care for people, to care for sick people, to make them well. I've always had this preventative mindset that if we prevent certain things, we won't really have to treat. But then there are some things that just aren't preventable. But for those things we can prevent, we need to. I've always had that mindset, but now my purpose in nursing is geared toward empowering people to take advantage or to take accountability for their own wellness, their own health, and be an advocate for themselves. And so when you're going in the hospital to have a baby, you need an advocate. Like I said, whether that is your husband, significant other, your mom, a friend, somebody that's going to be there to advocate for you. Because when you're in labor, you're not remembering all of the things that you need and your desires. With this advocate, discuss your birth plan. How do you want your birth to go? Do you want an epidural? Do you want a natural birth? Let them know your birth history. Let them know what's been going on throughout your pregnancy, so that if something doesn't look right, they can be there to advocate for you. Let them know how you're feeling, if you're in pain, if you're not. And that person needs to have the willpower and the strength enough to stand up to a medical professional, because we can't put so much of control into the medical professional's hands. They're human just like us. They make mistakes, and they don't know you as well as you know yourself. So if something doesn't feel right, you stand up for yourself, and you make sure you have that person there to advocate for you, to say this is not right, or this is what you want, or this is what she desires, to ensure that you are getting your needs met, to make sure that you are being treated fairly, and to even encourage you to stay on path, stay on topic. Just like my god sister, she said, PJ, this is what you wanted. You wanted this. Now I support you either way you decide, but I just want to remind you of what you wanted. I needed that from her, because she didn't let me give in. She didn't let me be in pain, and she said she was there to support me, but she knew how badly I wanted to have a natural birth with no medicine. And those little words helped me successfully have this birth, on top of the doctors knowing what they're doing. But you know, all of it together worked in synergy. So that's why I say you need an advocate. It's just I keep hearing these horror stories of black women going in the hospital and dying, or going in the hospital because they're not being given the right care that they need, because of the color of their skin, or because of these preconceived notions, because of the color or complexion of someone's skin, and that's not right. So you need to have an advocate at your side. Like I said, whether that's your husband, friend, cousin, somebody close to you, someone that knows you, or if you don't have any family, hire somebody, a doula, or somebody that is going to, a midwife, somebody that's going to advocate for your safety, for your well-being, and your desires, and make sure that your needs are met. That is a must before you go in the hospital, not just to have a baby, but with anything. Make sure that they're advocating for you. Make sure they're not just sitting back and going with the flow. Make sure that your needs are met. Okay? So that is it for my birth story. That is how I've had a successful VBAC. Said if you want to hear about the miscarriages and the healing process that I went through, that, or what I did to prepare to have a successful VBAC or natural birth, leave me a comment below. I will make a separate video about those. But thank you all for joining me. I hope that my story inspires you, encourages you, or gives you hope into having a VBAC or a natural birth. It is, like I said, it was one of the most beautiful experiences. I wish I had more pictures, but I didn't really need all of that. It's just the memories that I had from it were amazing, and I would do it all over again if I were to have another child. Mind you, I'm not really feeling having a child right now, but I would do it all over again, and I'm grateful for that experience, for my last child to have had that experience. Any questions, any comments, leave below. Thank you for joining me today. Make sure you like this video and share it. Share it with someone you know that can use this video. And also, if you haven't yet, click the subscribe button. Tell your other friends, or your peeps, your mama, and everybody to subscribe to my channel, so that I can share what's on my heart and some wellness tips and anything else that I have to share. Make sure that you share it with them, have them subscribe, and make sure that you click that bell. There's a bell to the right of the subscribe button. Hit that notification bell so you know when I post more videos. Again, y'all, thank you so much for joining me today. Love and light to you. Namaste.